This is a Hayward Tuck Stories recording of Some Talk of Monsters, Book 1, An English Heritage, copyright Jack Hayward Tuck. Chapter 5, Songbirds and Fledglings. "Yes, we need to toughen you up," said Stella. Kip thanked her for her kind words, her black hair shimmering with purple in the afternoon sunlight, boldly framing her insect-like face. "So are we going around the lakes or what?" asked Spike. "Want to join us, Stella? I promised Kip and Sebastian a trip around the lakes." "The lakes? Yes, Spike. I'll come," said Stella, having received an approving look from Sebastian. "You don't mind, do you, Kip?" "Come on then," said Spike. "Let's take the lower lake route." Kip reminded the gang that they had to wait until 6 o'clock, as he had arranged to meet up with his new third-year friends. "What do we do now?" asked Stella, grabbing Kip's hand again. "You don't mind if I drop my books off at the hostel?" Kip said, shaking and letting go of Stella's hand. "We'll all meet outside the mansion house at 6, okay?" Kip and Sebastian ran off to their hostel, leaving Stella and Spike alone together. At 6 o'clock, Stella and Spike were already sitting on the steps at the main entrance to the mansion. Brian and Sarah were also waiting, but as they hadn't met the two first-year students, they didn't realize that they were joining them on their trip. It wasn't more than a few minutes later when Kip was spotted. He'd changed his jacket for a jumper and had now a small shoulder bag with him. Then Sebastian came walking up too. "Poppy and Jamie will join us later," he said. "They're over in the student bar." Kip introduced everybody, as the gang of 6 then walked up the path towards what was to be their first adventure together, their first excursion around the lakes. Walking down towards the lake from the mansion house brought several of the large sculptures into view. This was before the path would lead down to the first bridge that crossed the narrow river, although it wasn't so much a river, to be honest, but more like a stream. Sebastian paused at the lamp-post to tie his shoelace. The gang paused and waited for him. Sebastian looked up, noticing that the bridge had one of those maximum weight signs on it to the left, allowing for vehicles of only 12 tons to cross. "No fear of any tanks getting over here then if a war starts," said Spike. "It'll not be tanks that'll come," Kip replied, looking up at the clouds, as if searching the clouds for an oncoming missile. "He still thinks nuclear war's coming, Spike," Sebastian laughed. "I bet he's going to write a poem about it, aren't you, mate?" "Perhaps," said Kip, but he was not really listening. He had other things on his mind. Spike was also lost in his thoughts until the noise of birds brought them both back down to earth. To the boys' right, the weeping willows were sheltering a party of angry-looking ducks. Sebastian stood up and startled one of the ducks. All the birds then began to quack, so the boys backed off and hurried to the river crossing. Spike was the first on the bridge. He noticed that the stream to the left was far more overgrown with grasses and freshwater flora than on the other side, and it looked as if it needed some loving care and attention from the park wardens. "Not much room for fish," he said. "Not big fish, that's for sure." At that moment, Stella came running up, waving her arm. "Hey, mind if I join you guys?" she said, out of breath. "You said I could come." "If you can keep up with us." "Sure," said Spike. Sebastian looked at Kip. He was kicking loose stones from the path. "You don't mind, do you, Kip?" she asked. But Kip didn't answer. He was too distracted by the sights and sounds of the parkland. Once over the bridge, the lower lake made itself visible through the few gaps in the trees. "It looks a long walk, guys," Stella said, still breathless. "My brother told me it takes an hour to walk both lakes," Kip said, hoping that Stella might change her mind and head back to campus. "It looks further. You're not backing out, are you, Stella?" "It's not really far, Stella," said Spike. To the right, a man was putting a padlock on one of the 2 doors to the boathouse. He turned and gave the students a disapproving stare as they paused to watch what he was doing. "I don't think we're supposed to be here, Kip." "No one can stop us walking the lakes, Stella," Spike then spotted something unusual behind him towards the left. "Hey, look at that," he said excitedly. "What do you think it is?" asked Sebastian. "We've often wondered," said Jamie, arriving with Poppy after crossing the lawn from the football field. "Sorry we're late, guys." Before reaching the path ahead, the one that would take you on your quest around the lower lake, was a patch of scrub. To the left, stepping onto the coarse grass and hidden amongst the shrubs and small trees, was a pyramid made of what appeared to be concrete and gravel, although it was covered in moss and lichens, so nobody knew for certain. There were also 3 holes set horizontally 1/2 metre from the ground, oozing some kind of liquid out of them that didn't look like water or oil. "What are these holes for?" Kip asked, running his hand on the surface. "No idea," said Spike. "Air holes?" Kip then said how in his brother's diary Hop had once suggested to Max that it was the mucus juices from rotting corpses, the bodies of virgins captured by the lake demons and imprisoned inside there. But that was, as Kip knew, Hop just storytelling. So the gang of adventurers crept around the side of the pyramid, trying their best to work out what it was. "Puzzling, very puzzling," said Kip, scratching his wrist. "What do you think, Sebastian?" "Definitely someone's tomb," he said, placing his hand on the cold wall. Stella huffed and said, "It's more likely to be another one of these silly art installations." "Stella could be right," Spike said, "but it still doesn't explain the holes." Then, by pulling back the grasses and overgrown ivy, Kip revealed its entrance. Spike stepped forward and looked down, counting 8 steps to a small blue door below. "An uninviting chamber if I ever saw one," he said. "A place for interrogation or imprisonment does spring to mind," said Kip. Perhaps Hop had been right, for there was a strong, unpleasant smell like rotting cheese and fish. "True, you wouldn't be able to escape from here," said Sebastian. "Let's go. This smell is turning my stomach," Stella said, looking away with her hand across her mouth. "It does creep you out," said Spike. So the gang turned and hurried over the scrub, trampling down the long grasses with their sneakers and filling the air with the sounds of crunching twigs. "Watch out for these nettles, guys," said Jamie. Spike paused to watch the boathouse man swing and close the gate behind him. It made a clank, setting the ducks off again. Spike then noticed that the man was now carrying a coiled rope and a cloth tool bag. Stepping back onto the gravel, a gang of Canada geese sauntered arrogantly across the gang's path, having been for a patrol on the lake. The birds were shaking the water from their feathers and honking as if to show how bold they were and that they were up for a fight if provoked. "They look like they've had a good swim," said Sebastian. "Careful," said Kip. "I've heard they can turn real nasty." "Only when there's chicks," replied Sebastian, bending down and holding out his fingers. Poppy sighed and said, "Gooselings." "Yeah, those." Kip ran to the fence. He lifted his foot to climb up, then balancing himself on the first bar and gripping the top plank, he leaned back and stared out across the lake. He wondered what his brother would have looked out for on the lake. The birds? The fish swimming close to the surface? Or perhaps something else would have caught his eye. The water was rippling due to the slight breeze blowing in from the east. Kip thought about his brother and how he wouldn't have liked to have the breeze on his face. He always felt cold. He remembered reading in his brother's diary how Ivy had called this the most useful wind for manipulating the way things behave. She was a strange woman, that Ivy Godwin. She had once told Hop how it was the perfect wind for casting love spells. Kip breathed in the cool autumn air, taking it deep into his lungs. Was it love that killed my brother? The easterly breeze was a welcome and soothing addition to the late September sun. Spike wished he had brought a blank canvas to capture the scene, for the blue of the water mirrored the blue of the sky, one reflecting the other, and was a rare sight in this cloudy and overcast part of England, where grey or white skies were the norm. "What are you looking at, Kit?" Sarah shouted, walking over with Brian on the path just ahead. "Nothing," Kit shouted back. "Only how beautiful it all is." But Kit was looking for something. He was looking at the water and wondering why his brother had written about how the lake had had this hold over him, such a powerful hold that had given him the urge to swim to the middle and then to drown himself in its murky depths. Sarah sighed and said, "I wouldn't walk on the deer park, guys. It's terribly muddy." "Not without Wellingtons," said Brian, looking back at the lake. "I'd love to take a boat out." Kit looked down at him from the fence. "I've heard that they don't let you," Kit said. "A bit mean if you ask me." "Then what's the reason for a boathouse?" asked Sebastian, "if there's no boating?" "Don't know," said Sarah. "Guess it's for the park rangers to work out on the lake." "Unfair, that is," said Brian. "It's our college." "We could make our own boat, Brian. A canoe or something," Kit suggested. The gang muttered a few words before nodding their heads in approval of Kip's cool idea, all except Sebastian, that was, who pointed out that it would take a lot of work to build a boat. "I was thinking of a raft, Sebastian," Kit replied. "Something simple to build." "Yeah, we should build a raft," said Spike, excited by the idea. Spike then looked at the paved mooring area that jutted in from the lake. Kip had noticed it too. "You could park a small submarine there," Kip said, grinning at Spike. "You moor. You don't park," said Stella. "Anyway, where would it go, this submarine?" "You're not making any friends here, you know," said Spike. Sebastian, sensing a little tension, said, "Stop picking on Kip, Stella." Stella didn't respond well to being told off, but she chose to say nothing this time, and to keep her anger under her mop of long black hair. Spike then pointed out towards a square of water built to fit 2 small rowing boats, and then out towards the upper lake to the left. "It could patrol and protect the bridges," he said. "From what?" Kip asked. "Well, it could circle the lake, testing for anything unusual." Sebastian then jumped up on the fence and said, "I don't think a submarine could sail onto the upper lake, unless there's an underwater tunnel. We should investigate." Stella laughed. She couldn't stop herself. "You boys are funny." "Why?" Kip sneered. "What's funny about us?" "You're like little kids," she said. "You really do think this lake is deep enough for a submarine." "Well, we don't know how deep it is. Do you?" said Sebastian. "Who knows how deep it is, or what we would find down there?" "Well, I don't think you'll find anything bigger than fish," Stella quipped. "Unless you're expecting to discover the son of Nessie, excited to spend his holiday months away from the icy waters of Scotland in this fish bowl." "Come on, stop arguing and let's go," said Jamie, waiting on the path with Poppy. Spike then said, "There might be a pike or something." "Or something," Kit replied, jumping down from the fence. He headed for the path, turned and shouted, "Or there might be corpses." So up the path they all trod, with the lake on their right side, and the deer park to their left, hidden behind the trees. The path was straight at first, with the taller trees to the left on the scrub. This area was now full of pink flowers, and as you walked further, became more open with fewer trees. The gang stopped for a moment to sit on the bank of the lake. The water was rippling, and the wind was now picking up, causing the leaves all around them to rustle. End of chapter 5, part 1.